Welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created this show to help lawyers find happiness in life with a law degree. Together with my guest, we provide the knowledge, insight, skills, inspiration, and encouragement you need to find your happy. Today, I chat with Christina Vinters. She's a divorce mediator, ex-divorce lawyer, and dispute resolution business consultant. She started her mediation business, Modern Separations, in May 2016. She's also the author of Pathways to Amicable Divorce, a book full of tips on how to get through separation in a healthy and efficient way. Christina was such a blast to chat with, and I think that her story of transitioning out of law and launching her business in just 6 weeks is really inspirational. I hope you guys enjoy it. Welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project, Christina. I am so excited that we are finally getting to connect.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really pleased to be able to chat with you today.
So you are my second Canadian on the show, so I'm really interested to see how that actually impacts our conversation, if it does at all.
Okay, interesting.
To start, I'd love if you could just give us a brief description of what you do and how you got to where you are.
Sure. So I started out as a divorce lawyer. I was in that field for about 6.5 years. And last year I moved into doing strictly divorce mediation. So now what I do is I work with separating couples to help them agree on and document the details of their separation. I do that mostly through e-mediation, which is a fancy word, but really it just means that I work with people through Skype, phone, and email. And for people who are local to me, I offer them the option of meeting in person as well. In addition to that, I'm working on a number of other projects, basically all centered around working towards improving the experience of divorce for families. So a couple of other pieces of what I'm doing are I published a book last year.
Oh, fantastic!
That's it's a book. It's a short book with tips and strategies on how to maintain respectful relationships during the process of separation and try to get your situation resolved smoothly and without use of family court. So that's called Pathways to Amicable Divorce. And that was a fun project. And I've been getting quite a bit of attention from other lawyers who are quite interested to see how I've been able to create this mediation business. So I decided to start a consulting branch out of that. I was getting so many requests for information. So now I'm also working with other divorce professionals who are interested in building successful consensual dispute resolution practice. Yeah. And then as part of that, I have a Facebook group supporting professionals. So that is, if it's okay for me to give the link for that.
Of course.
If people are interested in joining the conversation, they can find the link to that at modernseparations.com/group.
And for anybody who is in the car or out on a walk or, just cleaning the kitchen right now, I'll leave all of these links in the show notes so people can find you when they get back to their computer.
Perfect.
There's so many things I want to ask you in that because, first of all, to be clear, you no longer are a practicing attorney then. You now solely do mediation?
That's right. I'm still a member of the Law Society. I'm a non-practicing member of the Law Society, but I'm strictly doing mediation.
And how did you feel about giving up that kind of title and dropping the bar component of your legal, experience, practice?
I was a bit hesitant, but given the work that I wanted to do, I felt quite strongly that being in the role of a neutral was more appropriate for me personally than being in the role of an advocate. And I looked at all the different pros and cons, and essentially there was no benefit to me keeping my practicing license. So it actually simplified things for me a little bit.
The fact that you were able to make that kind of logical, strategic decision is really indicative of, I think, a really intentional perspective about your career and how you want to serve your clients. Because I know so many lawyers who I talk to who talk about being on the podcast because they're really happy in their life right now, but they no longer are lawyers and they talk really bitterly about being lawyers, yet they're all still holding on to their bar certification.
Mm.
They still pay the fees every year. So there's clearly something there.
Yeah.
That's still, I mean, they like are, one of them, she's an accountant now. Another one is a book publisher, yet all of them are still bar qualified and still pay their dues and are 10, 15 years since the last time they practiced.
Wow.
But they don't want to let go of that. And so it's really interesting to me because I'm sure that they have their reasons. I'm sure they've gone through their own strategic, calculation. But I have to wonder what it means that you were able to do that so smoothly.
So I suppose there's a little bit of safety in the fact that in Canada anyway, for 3 years after you change your practice from practicing to non-practicing, it's quite easy to go back to becoming a licensed attorney if you want to. So I have 2 years left if I were to change my mind. So that 3-year transition period, I suppose, is a bit of a psychological safety net.
That's fair. I actually don't know what it is in the US, so I should probably look into that before I open my big mouth. So there are a lot of lawyers out there who I think probably have never really even thought about going out on their own because it sounds so daunting, but they know they want to leave their firms, and often they just jump from their firm to another business instead of really considering using the skills they have to make money on their own. How did you kind of come to the decision that it was time to leave, and what did you do to prepare for that transition?
Well, it was a fairly long time in the making. I had been unhappy for quite a while. It was pretty clear to me the adversarial system was not a good fit for me. I was never one of those people who enjoyed debating and arguments just for the sake of the intellectual banter. So that was not a natural fit for me. And over time, I also noticed the really negative effect on my clients because I was working specifically in family law. To me, it just seems the litigation process is so poorly designed for families. So as I was noticing those negative effects on my clients in terms of the stress and the cost and the really destructive nature of the process on their family relationships, it was becoming more and more clear to me that that was not something that I wanted to be involved in. And essentially, I realized over time I had put myself in a bit of a box, thinking that I had no other choice.
But it's so common.
And it occurred to me one day, if I have no choice, somebody with 2 degrees in one of the most fortunate countries in the world, if I have no choice, then who does have a choice? So
fair enough. I love that. I love that perspective.
Yeah, and so it's all about how you think about it. And then the other piece was that I noticed, so I turned 40 in 2015. And rather than feeling old, it actually sort of highlighted for me how young I was because I was spending a lot of time thinking about retirement and counting down the years and the days until I could retire. And I thought, I can't just wish away the next 25 years of my life. That's ridiculous. So something needs to change. So yeah, it was definitely a scary process. And it started out for me spending some time in a very hypothetical brainstorming session over time, over the period of several months of what could this look like if I were to make a change. And it was not by any means a plan at that point because it was too scary a thought to actually make a plan. So it was entirely hypothetical. But I took a family vacation. I was away for 3 weeks, completely away from my practice, away from my email. And in that time, I remembered what it was like to feel at peace and not be in fight mode in that adversarial system. And when I came back to my practice, it was a very, very clear moment where I realized this has to change. And I actually gave my notice the next day. I gave 6 weeks notice. So that was lots of time to wrap up what I could in terms of my file load and transition the rest. And then in those 6 weeks, every evening I was spending every minute pretty much putting all my systems and my plan in place for launching the new business.
There's so many parts of your story that I love. First of all, I want to start with, how did you end up a lawyer if you were not kind of aligned with the adversarial nature of being a lawyer?
Well, that's an interesting question. I suppose I love the analytical aspect of it. I love reading. I love writing. I love research, all of those components. I also really enjoy dealing with clients one-on-one. So I knew I wanted to help people in some direct way like that. But it was the adversarial part, which is just really contrary to my personal nature.
I'm similarly inclined, and I think my reason is makes less sense than you. I went to law school because I thought I would be good at law school. Like I loved the idea of law school and kind of the conversations that were happening in that context. And the fact that it would train me to be a lawyer afterwards really wasn't much of a consideration for me, which is a ridiculous prospect when you think about how much money I spent to kind of ponder thoughts. But I was also a philosophy major, so it wasn't the first time I spent a lot of money to ponder. And now I have a podcast, so I can further ponder. It clearly fuels me in a way that I guess is well worth the money.
Yeah.
But my second thing I wanted to say was, as far as taking that 3-week vacation and kind of disconnecting, I think that's amazing because I don't think enough people do that and take that time. Were you doing that throughout your career, or was this different than usual?
I actually was quite fortunate in that I did have the freedom to be able to take regular vacations. 3 weeks was unusual. It was usually 1 week or 2 weeks at a time, but I was able to do that a couple of times a year. So yeah, I was in a very lucky position, and I was with a great firm where I could have stayed for the rest of my career. I had really supportive colleagues, fantastic assistants, and yes, so I did have that ability to disconnect, but it was just not enough. You know, the first day back, I would be as stressed as the day I had been right before the vacation. So something significant in my day-to-day life really had to change.
That's so fair. And I know that feeling so well. I recently went on it was my husband and I's 10-year anniversary, and we took our first trip by ourselves without the kids. And we went to this spa resort in Santa Fe, which was amazing. And we did meditation, we did yoga, we did pool, mineral soaked spa baths.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. We, massages, everything. Came back, gone, within an hour of being in the door. All that time and effort I'd spent towards recentering and reflecting felt like it was washed out the window. And I was like, how does this job do that to me? So I completely understand. My last question about your story thus far is financially, and I don't need numbers or I don't need, specifics, but kind of, had you been preparing to make this leap, or was this really a leap of faith financially? Like, what kind of nest egg did you have in case this didn't work out?
Yeah, it was a huge leap of faith financially. I had not been planning to do this. I had actually been planning to be a partner at the firm where I was at. So I had a small bit of savings, and I had a line of credit. And really, I had a fantastic reputation in the community. So that was what I was banking on, that I had lots of connections. People know me, like me. I already had a reputation for being a very settlement-oriented family lawyer. So it was a leap of faith for sure. But I got to that point personally where something had to change. And if it wasn't this, then I was going to go work at Starbucks or something like that. But I was not going to keep doing what I was doing.
That kind of commitment to change is exactly the kind of commitment you need to make that big of a change. You really can't be looking back and wondering, what if I had just stayed? Because if you have 1 foot out the door, 1 foot in the door, neither is getting the best of you. And I think some people spend a long time kind of planning that perfect departure, but then they never depart. And they're like, well, I'll just go to another firm that's a little bit, easier hours. And I'll just go in-house for a couple years. That's just a little bit easier, and slowly build this business. And that works for some people, but I think it's really hard to get the momentum that you need when you still have 1 foot in the corporate world and working for somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of lawyers also have that idea that, well, I went to law school, I made my bed, now I have to lie in it.
Yep.
So
It's like we're punishing ourselves for going to law school.
Yeah, I'll just buckle down and power through for the next 30 years.
Isn't it ridiculous when you say it like that? But on the day-to-day, because I definitely know people who feel that way, and on the day-to-day it makes perfect sense, and it feels like what is expected.
Mm-hmm.
Two of the resources that allowed you to do this that people don't really appreciate enough is creating that network and reputation and that line of credit.
Yeah.
Well, I often, and this is really scary to people who've taken out a lot of student loans, but I'm like, if you have a really big salary right now, we're still, at least in the US, in a place where people can get a 0% credit card that's like 18 months, 0% interest. And I'm like, if you are really going to go all in on this business, apply for that before you leave. That gives you an 18-month buffer.
Mm-hmm.
It's the cheapest credit you're going to get, and use this as a leap of faith in yourself kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really hard for people to take that financial leap. And for some reason, they think that like the $200,000 investment in law school, it has more guarantees than the like, I don't know what it takes, to set up a website, to like just try for a year. If you have enough savings to live and it's really just investing in the business on the credit card, maybe it's that first $5,000, $10,000 compared to $200,000. It seems doable, but is really a hurdle that a lot of people struggle to get over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship is scary, and there's safety in being in that firm with your biweekly paycheck.
Mm-hmm. So I would love to transition to your business, Modern Separations, which I know that you were recently nominated as New Business of the Year, which is super exciting. And I love the way you've set up your business, because the way I understand it is it's not just driven by what your clients need, which I think a lot of law firms claim to be about, but it's also about what your values are and how you want to serve those clients. But I don't know that a lot of lawyers even know what that means to them, because I think people take on the values and expectations that have been handed down to them from other people about how things should be, how we should be as lawyers, how we should be as members of society, what kind of values matter in the workplace. So what kind of process did you go through to figure out what your values were and how to integrate them into your business?
I think I've always had a pretty strong sense of what sits well with me and what doesn't. I also really listened to my clients over the years, and so amassed quite a bit of feedback about what were the things that were causing them anxiety, what were their real priorities going through the process. When I left the firm, I really went through all of those experiences and tried to figure out, if I'm creating something from the ground up, how do I create this new service in a way which is really speaking to people's needs and desires? So a few of the things that I did were I implemented both daytime and evening appointments, which really allows people the ability to handle their family matters without taking time off work. Sometimes it's a private matter. People don't necessarily want to tell their boss that they have to take time off work to go see a lawyer. It's also a financial issue. They're already going through a time of hardship, and it's difficult for a lot of people to take time off work to then go pay a lawyer. So that was one of the things I did. And the other, which is really the key one, the key aspect which sets my business apart, is that I've created a flat fee pricing model. So a huge amount of my clients' anxiety in the past had been around, what is my bill going to amount to when it's being billed at an hourly rate? And in family law, the traditional answer is, well, I have no idea. It could be anywhere between $5,000 and $100,000. It totally depends on you and how your partner decides to respond and how long we end up digging in and going through various court processes. So that was highly unsatisfactory to most clients. And so I did a lot of work figuring out how can I make this something where when they sign up, they know exactly what they are signing on to and what exactly they will be responsible for. And I did feel like once I left the firm, my values didn't change, but they really became further clarified because I guess I didn't feel the need to suppress them anymore. So when you're part of a larger firm, you're not only representing yourself, but you're representing the whole firm.
I'm like smiling and shaking and nodding my head furiously on the side because there's so many things I love about questioning assumptions and questioning the assumption that work has to happen during the workday. More and more, I wonder why that's true. Like often as someone who has a full-time job, when things are closed at 5 p.m., I'm like, why? Like, how is it possible that everything, like, I should look into this. I don't even know how the workday started and like why we still perpetuate this idea that 9 to 5 is when things should be open and like all things should be open at the same time. Because it seems like some services that are happening during daytime hours should be happening during nighttime hours or later in the evening. For example, like when I started working with a coach, all of my coaches only had daytime hours. Or like when I tried to find my first financial planner, they only had daytime hours. And I was like, I don't have like an hour during my workday to sit and do personal things like on a regular basis. And even if it was at like 6, I could duck out early. But at like 10:30 on a Thursday, I just didn't understand how that was how everybody just thought that was appropriate. And then the other assumption that you questioned is the billable hour, which I know there's a lot of debate about in the legal community, especially amongst solo lawyers. But I appreciate that you're kind of taking a model that we assume is the only way it can be done in our industry and really trying to provide something for your clients that makes them more comfortable about working with you. And that's really the goal, right? Is to be able to serve the clients.
Yeah, that's something that they've really appreciated. But honestly, it's also improved my life as well because I'm not tracking everything in 6-minute increments of my day anymore. So I really enjoy it too.
The freedom. I can't even imagine. I would love if you could talk a little bit more. I didn't prep you for this question, but what were you able to get done in that 6 weeks that when you left, like how long after you left were you able to launch?
After I left the firm, I believe I probably launched the website within a few days of leaving the firm. And then I think I had my first couple of clients within 2 or 3 weeks of having left. So within the 6 weeks after I gave notice, that is when I put my accounting system in place. I figured out a marketing plan. I built my website. I got a logo designed, and then from there designed the business cards and pamphlets and so forth. What else did I do? I basically did everything I needed to be up and running within a couple of weeks
so
of
impressive.
having left.
That's so impressive. But you also just focused on the things that needed to get done, it sounds like. Because I think sometimes people get too in the weeds and they try to create these really complex like business plans and projections and, but it seems like you were really focused on the tangible, like the things your clients would need.
I was focused on the basic necessities. And then, of course, I had a corporation started. I opened up a bank account, all that sort of stuff.
And so that was a year ago.
Yes, it was last May.
So almost a year. And how's this first year been? What was the hardest part?
It's been fantastic. It's been exciting. The hardest part, I would say, was the uncertainty. It was, I'm quite a planner, so it was difficult not to be able to count on that biweekly paycheck and know exactly where I would be 6 months from now, for example. But over time, patterns develop. And so now I'm feeling a lot more comfortable with, I can expect a certain number of clients to come in every month. And, maybe 1 month it'll be 1 couple less. Another month it'll be 2 couples more. But there's been a bit of certainty starting to develop now. So that's nice. And then I guess the other aspect is the social aspect. It was really nice being part of the social group of a firm. But I've been doing so much networking over the last year that essentially that has just transitioned into a lot of coffee dates and lunch dates and fundraising dinners and that sort of thing.
Do you find that the people that you network with now are more closely aligned with who you want to be in your work?
I don't know that the people have changed. I'm still in contact with a lot of the same people, but I think that they have a much clearer understanding of who I am.
Interesting. Well, I think that's fantastic. And I think that's really nice because part of what makes it hard for a lot of people to be in BigLaw is this feeling of having to play a role or act a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And that alone can be exhausting. And then you add on top of it the intellectual challenge, and then you add on top of it the hours, and then you add on top of it, the politics, and there's just all the other layers and layers of things that make it really challenging. So just being able to be yourself in the space in which you work must be so liberating.
Yes, I think that's been a huge relief for me. It makes me feel more comfortable in that. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, it makes me feel more comfortable networking. I tend to be, I'm an introvert, so I enjoy, I'm not great in, big groups and social situations. But now that I feel that I'm able to represent more of my true values, I'm finding it a lot easier and more pleasant to be in that type of situation.
I'm also an introvert by nature, which people find surprising since I have a podcast. And one of the secrets I have for networking that someone, I can't even remember where I learned this, but they said that instead of networking one-on-one, I should network two-on-one. So now I connect to, I love connecting people who I wish knew each other and I think would be a really good fit. And then that way I don't feel like this pressure to perform when I'm in the coffee date or in the conversation. And if it's not a good fit for me, at least the two other people, hopefully for them, usually for them, it is a good match and I've done some good for the day. So,
well, that's a great idea.
What was the most surprising for you about this first year and going out on your own?
Well, I had forgotten how much I love creative work. So I've really enjoyed working on my website and designing my marketing materials. I really get into that flow state when I'm doing the creative side of things. I find I'm just enjoying what I'm doing, and then I notice hours have passed. So that's been fun.
There's a real conversation, I think, right now, and maybe it's just where I'm spending my time, but I think there's a real conversation now around tapping into our creative side and really everybody having a creative side. We moved away from it into kind of this intellectual space, and I see this revival in creative entrepreneurship and just creative living, which I love, and it's so much more accessible. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that, but it's just so interesting because I talk to so many lawyers who love that side of their business because it allows them to be creative.
Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things I was missing at a firm, is that I had no control or input into that side of things.
Oh, firms. They're well suited for some people. And I'm at a firm and I'm happy with the firm I'm at, but it's also interesting because at some point I assume you're going to start hiring other people to support you. And how big do you anticipate getting?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know that I want to create a huge machine here. My husband works with me right now, so that is another bonus of creating our own business. So he actually does all of our intake procedures and talks to prospective clients to help them figure out if our services will be right for them. And then we recently hired a VA who's helping a little bit with the marketing end of things. So for now, I think I'm content with where we're at in terms of people. And I'm just trying to get more efficient in terms of how I use my time during the day to maximize the number of couples that I can help each month.
Let's talk about your husband a little, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How long did it take before was he always on board? Did he come in right away? How did that work?
He actually came in right away at the beginning. This is going to sound a bit crazy, but we actually both quit our jobs and started the business together.
I love crazy.
So Yeah, he's been a great backbone for me. He, like I said, he helps on the front end with bringing clients in, and then he also helps in doing sort of the running around stuff that I don't have time to do, going to deal with the bank or going to the post office, and then helping basically run our household. We also have 2 teenage boys, so he's kind of the point parent for taking them places and getting appointments done and that kind of thing.
My husband is also the point parent, so that makes me really happy to hear you say that. It's so fun to hear different dynamics of how people make it work. Because, again, you need to question the assumption that just one person needs to be making the money, or the woman needs to be the point person, or, one person has to stay at the job in order to launch a business. I think there's so many ways to make it work. And your story is so fascinating to me. Do you, at this point, I would love to know if you have any resources that may be helpful for other people who are considering making the leap, or who are starting their own business, or even considering mediation. I don't know. Were there any resources that have been helpful to you on your journey?
Sure. So let's see. There are a couple of podcasts I'd recommend for people who are thinking about making a change. I've really loved Jenny Blake's podcast. It's called the Pivot Podcast.
I love her book.
Yeah, you should check out her podcast. She's really great. And Jonathan Field's podcast, I really enjoy as well, The Good Life Project.
And he is a former attorney.
Yes, I only found that out recently. That's quite interesting.
I've been talking back and forth with him because I would love to get him on the show, but he's just been so busy.
Yeah, that would be an awesome interview. And then I love Seth Godin's book, The Purple, The Purple, I think it's just Purple Cow. Mm-hmm. So that's a great book about how to think about not necessarily marketing what you have, but how to design the marketing right into the structure of your business and what you're providing to set yourself apart. And then the last suggestion I would have would be any interview with Derek Spurs. He's a really fascinating entrepreneur, and one of his simple little thoughts about decision making is if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a no. So if it's not something that you're really excited about, is going to be driving your goals forward. If it's just sort of neutral or sounds like a good thing to do, probably the same.
I completely agree. I fell for the trap of saying lukewarm yes to too many things because I thought they could lead to a hell yeah. But now I realize I just need to be a little bit more patient and wait for the hell yeahs, because the last thing you want to do is be too busy to say yes to that because you have all these lukewarm yeses that you're
exactly. Mm-hmm.
So knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Part of me wants to say that I wish I had gone out on my own sooner.
That's what everyone always says.
Yeah, but honestly, I think I really needed all of the experience that I got. There was life experience, there was experience in the law, and I think I probably left at the right time. Just in terms of a couple of strategic things, I probably made some poor advertising decisions. I spent money on some traditional advertising that was not particularly effective. But other than that, I'm pretty pleased with how everything's gone so far.
There's something to be said for trusting the timing of your life and trusting that things will all come together, and you're not quite sure how yet. But often when people are on the other side of the transition and things are going as well as they are for you, they want to say they wish they had started it earlier. But then at the same time, like you said, if they had done it earlier, there's experiences and connections and other things that wouldn't have fallen into place. So, because people often ask me if I regret going to law school or taking on all that debt. But if I hadn't, then I wouldn't be on the journey I'm on now. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to regret something that's led me to kind of a really amazing place in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I've enjoyed this so much. And before I let you go, I just want to say a huge thank you for being a part of this project and sharing your inspirational story with my audience. And my last question for you is, what do you think separates those lawyers who are able to find happiness from those who remain unhappy in life?
I think lawyers, like all people, need to find a niche that really suits their values and their natural tendencies. and accommodates their strengths and weaknesses, right? But I think more than that, they need to be willing to take action and not just accept what is. I think the people who are happier are experimenting and tweaking things in all aspects of their life to figure out what's really going to work for them.
Fantastic. And I think that that's so, so important to constantly be assessing and making changes and pivoting. It doesn't have to be big pivots, but you shouldn't just kind of set a track and then just spend 30 years
Agreed.
on that track. So thank you. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Akoma. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. Please head over to my website, www.thehappylawyerproject.com, for more information from today's show. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave me your thoughts on the show. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or follow me on Instagram. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to head over to iTunes to subscribe and review the show. As you know, each rating helps more listeners find the show and helps me get awesome guests on here for you guys. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, head over to my website and let me know, or send me an email at Akoma, OKEOMA, @thehappylawyerproject.com. A special thanks to everyone who's left a review, sent me an email, or reached out to me in any way. I appreciate you. Thank you again for spending this time with me, and if you would like to learn more about working in your gift and living your passion, head over to the website for a free gift. Until next time, bye!